In this movie, we'll paint in the animal's hooves or whatever you call them in order to make them black. But first, I need to get rid of this brushstroke that we created in the previous movie. You can do that just by pressing the backspace key or the delete key on the Mac. And notice that while that gets rid of the brushstroke, it also gets rid of the layer that contained the brushstroke here inside the Layers panel, which means that if I want to paint some more using my brush tool, which I can get by pressing the B key, then I'm going to have to first recreate that layer, which is not what I want to do. So I'll just go ahead and press Control-Z or Command-Z on the Mac to undo the deletion of the layer. And then I'll go ahead and select that region using the rectangular marquee tool, which I can get by pressing the M key. And now if I draw a selection that's bigger than a brushstroke, so I've managed to select the whole thing, then if I press the backspace or delete key on the Mac, I delete the selection, but I leave the layer intact, as you can see over here in the Layers panel. And then I'll go ahead and click outside the selection to deselect the image. All right, now I'm going to go ahead and zoom in on the hooves just a little more here. And then I'll go ahead and select the brush tool. Now, it's way too big, as you can see right here. So I'm going to right-click inside the image window, and I'm going to go ahead and take the size value down to, let's say, about 40 pixels, and then I can check that that's a good size by moving my cursor out here into the image. And now I'll press the Enter key or the Return key on the Mac to accept that change, and I'll brush inside this hoof like so. And I actually need the brush to be a little smaller than this in order to get into some of the crevices right here. And so I'll right-click again, and let's take this size value down to 20 pixels this time around. And then I'll go ahead and drag inside the image like so. And I recommend you paint small brush strokes because if you go for really big ones and then you end up making a mistake like so, then you're going to have to press Control-Z or Command-Z on the Mac in order to undo that entire brush stroke. So if you paint just little brush strokes like that one, and then I press Control-Z or Command-Z on the Mac because I goofed that one up, then I just undo a little bit of work instead of a lot. All right, so I'm just going to go ahead and paint this guy in. This is really the best way to work, is to just free-form paint here inside of this region. You also have the option, by the way, of painting straight lines inside Photoshop, and you do that by clicking at one point and then shift-clicking at another, and that'll go ahead and join those two brush strokes together. I don't want that brush stroke, however, so I'll press Control-Z or Command-Z on the Mac. All that does, by the way, is get rid of the shift click point. So we still have that original click point left behind. And in another program, you would press Control-Z or Command-Z again in order to backstep even further. But that's not the way it works inside Photoshop. Control or Command-Z just undoes and then redoes. If you want to backstep multiple operations, then what you want to do is go up to the window menu and choose the History command, which brings up this really great panel that lists every single trackable operation. And so as you can see, if I click on this brush tool, the one above, I get rid of that shift-click brushstroke. And if I click above it, I get rid of that brushstroke that was the result of the first click. And then I can go ahead and hide the History panel and resume work on my artwork. So I'll go ahead and click and then shift-click like so along this edge. So little shift clicks are the way to go because this isn't an absolutely straight edge. And then I'll just paint that stuff away. All right, I'll go ahead and paint that little bit of whiteness away. And now let's switch over to the front hooves. I'll go ahead and zoom in once again. And I'm this time just kind of dragging inside this hoof that is inside of this horseshoe, I guess it is, in order to paint it away. And I'm already doing what I told you not to do. I'm painting big, long brush strokes. Generally a bad idea, but I'm not always the first guy to follow my own advice. And at this point, it looks like I've painted away things pretty nicely. But if you look closely, you're going to see some modeling over here in the rump, as well as over here in the snout. Now, it's very dark, so it's a little bit hard to make out, which is why I'm going to show you a trick that's going to bring out everything that's not black and make it totally obvious using an adjustment layer in the very next movie.